You're listening to Opening the Harp Chakra, the podcast, bringing you beautiful, healing, magical harp music and talking to the artists that create it. I'm your host, Jay Michaels. Thank you so much for being with us. Today we're in the States talking on the phone with a harper I had the honor of meeting in person several years ago at the Florida Renaissance Festival when I was performing there. And she's a singer, songwriter, influences, including many types of music. And I'm just so thrilled to have her here with us today. I want to say hello to Martha Gallagher. Hi, Martha.
Hi, Jay. How are you this morning?
I am great. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you very much.
Excellent.
I'm delighted to be on your program, your podcast. Thank you so much for thinking of me. It's a pleasure, and I love the idea of what you're doing with it.
Well, thank you so much. Well, I'd like to ask everyone how they ended up playing the harp. How did your journey lead you to the harp?
Well, it took a little bit, but originally when I was probably I might have been 12 or so, and I had inherited a tiny bit of money from my grandmother, and in going to a music store thinking I might find an instrument that I wanted to play, I found a harp, and I bought it and started to play it, but then the harp had some real issues and I ended up selling it. And so it was years later when I was finishing college and I saw someone playing the Celtic harp, and I just fell in love with it all over again and built my own first harp from a design that I found, and realized really quickly that I did not have that kind of special patience that instrument builders have to have.
Right.
But I love playing the instrument, and I started by I wanted to get off the paper, if you will. Mm-hmm. I was a classically trained musician. I played flute. I played in a symphony for a while, but I also played folk guitar and sang. And that playing the guitar, I just felt this freedom of not using sheet music, as great a tool as it is. So when I started playing the harp, I said, okay, I'm not going to use sheet music. I'm just going to start, playing what comes to me. Started with Celtic music, and then found my way into all kinds of other music that I was exploring, off the harp. I was a singer in a blues and jazz band. I was a singer in a rock band, but I didn't necessarily want to be in the venues that music was taking me to as I started my family. Mm-hmm. So I started doing more and more with the harp, and I thought, oh, surely I can play like blues on the harp. Oh yeah. Oh, surely I can play some of this wonderful jazz standards on the harp. Oh yeah.
Right.
So I ended up, and so I do play a lot of different styles of music. I just love the instrument. It seems to have such a stereotype about it, and yet it is such an amazing instrument with the breadth and depth of what it is capable of. And the hardest part is, if you're going to do blues on the harp, is making the harp sound dirty.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yes. I think one of my favorite things about the harp is taking pieces that you wouldn't expect and playing them on the harp, and it just makes them, elevates them, or it's a magical thing that the harp does to pieces of music.
It is. Yeah. It is. It gives such a different dimension,
right.
To the music and to the instrument itself.
Well, Martha, let's listen to some of your music. I'd like to start with a piece that you sent me called Early Morning. Can you tell me a little bit about this piece?
Yes. It's a piece I wrote a number of years ago, and interestingly, I think, is that it came about initially from an exercise from a college course I was taking in Orff Schulwerk, and we had to create a modal piece. I happen to love the magic of early morning, and so as you'll hear the lyrics, you'll hear what I was feeling, and it came back to me many years later, and then became something that I put with the harp. So this is Early Morning.
So that's Early Morning from Martha Gallagher. Let's talk about the harp as a healing instrument. What are your thoughts?
Well, the harp has, if you look at, tales and legends from all over the world, if there's a harp in it, it's always magical. And I think the magic of it lies in its ability to touch us, to reach into our spirit, into our soul, and into our body. And even though that may not be expressed as such in like the tales and legends, to me that's actually at the core of why we think of the harp as magical. It with all of those strings and with the structure, the physical structure of the harp, it's when you play it, it's constantly vibrating. And those vibrations are always sending out their healing, their music into the world. And so as a player, we're right next to it. And then it just, the vibrations continue to go out. And this is not anything I've studied. So I speak from a place of just having spent a lot of years right next to the harp. And then also as a performer, I see what the magic of even the sound of the harp does to someone listening. And that is one of the things that has kept me playing the harp all this time, because I know that it actually has a power for beauty and goodness and healing in the world.
And that leads us into a project you're involved in called Just a Moment Music. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, I would love to. This is my passion at the moment. As I mentioned before, I did all these other kinds of music on the harp, and I still love playing that. And I realized, though, is that one of the things I would sometimes avoid on the harp, because I didn't think I was very good at, was actually playing what I would call stereotypical harp music, really like beautiful, soothing harp music. I would listen to other people playing and say, wow, they're so fabulous. But somehow I would dance around that. But then I've come to it in a sort of a backdoor way. After so many years of playing, I got a small harp. Again, I started with a small harp, and then, 30 years later, I got a small harp, and I wanted to be able to take it out into natural settings. So where I live in the mountains in the Northeast U.S., I take it into the mountains. I take it on my kayak. I take it into the forest. And when I go to places like the coast and go to the ocean, I take the harp to the beach. And I found that especially when I was at the beach, because I could just walk right in the water and I could just keep walking and playing, that music started flowing through me. And it was, of course, all my, practice and knowledge and everything went into that, but music just flowed. And then I started thinking about, what if I just started recording short pieces of music for people, like just a minute long. And I was thinking, I would, put them out to the public weekly. And when I was in the studio a couple of years ago to record some pieces, my engineer, who I've worked with for 20 years, said, Martha, I think this would make a great daily series. And so thus, Just Moment Music was born. And in my time in the studio, I've recorded nearly 300 one-minute long improvised harp pieces. They're all contemplative. They all have different flavors, if you will, but still very peaceful, contemplative, inviting music. And the idea of Just a Moment Music, it's a subscription series, and each day you get a different piece of music. And the idea is to, not only for the joy of just gentle listening, but often as humans, we'll say, oh, yes, I'm going to set aside time for myself to meditate, or I'm going to set a moment to pray, or I'm just going to take a moment out and chill. But it's really easy to let say, no, I can't do that till later and put it off. And we don't give ourselves that place to do that. And the Just a Moment music pieces, you can turn to that as a gentle framework to just give yourself that moment to reset and, find peacefulness or calmness or stillness in yourself.
Okay, so we have an example of some of your music from Just a Moment Music. Can you introduce this piece?
Yes. So they don't have names so much. I have them identified for myself. But this is one of the pieces that I recorded. And when I was in the studio, I would sit down and I would tune the harp in a certain key. And then I would take my phone and set the timer on it. And I would start playing and I would watch the timer go. More as a set of guidelines, because I just needed to know where a minute was, and I would just feel that flow of time and try to take the piece to bring it to what might be a natural end within a minute. So settle into this piece.
Right, very nice. I'd like to listen to another piece, Martha. This one I understand you wrote during the COVID quarantine. It's called "Bless This Precious Day." Want to say something about this?
Yes. When we went into quarantine, so mid-March-ish, there was this explosion online of, wonderful explosion of artists, lots of musicians doing all kinds of, live and recorded events. And I thought that was fabulous. And part of me was called to do that because I had been doing that already for several years. But part of me said, no, Martha, you need to go still. You need to be in this time, in this moment, and what is this time and this moment? Because it would have been really easy for me to jump into doing things which would, conveniently let me not acknowledge really the depth of what was going on in the world and how I was feeling about it. So I went still for quite a while, but that out of that rose this really strong desire to create music, to share music. And so I thought, well, what if I do something once a week, a new piece of music once a week? And really it's for me, but I'm going to share it and put it out on social media. And so I created a series, I call them Gratitudes. So it's music born of gratitude for things in my daily life. And a lot of the Gratitudes are things just focus on small things in my life. But this one, Bless This Precious Day, came out of the fact that a good friend of mine had just published a book, her first book this summer, called The Blessed Home. And in it, she has, at the end of the book, after talking about what blessing is and what it can do, she has some sample blessings. And this one about the new day was just so beautiful and so moving to me that it caused me to write this song.
I bless this day before I open my eyes. I bless this day as I arise. It is a gift that I've been given. I bless this precious day. I bless its preciousness, sacredness, holiness, in all I think and do and say. I bless this precious day. I bless its preciousness, sacredness, holiness, in all I think and do and say. I bless this precious day. I bless the moments, great and small. I bless the hours, one and all. It is a gift that I've been given. I bless this precious day. Oh, oh, oh. I bless this precious day.
Very catchy. Bless this precious day, Martha Gallagher. Martha, how many harps do you currently have?
That's a matter of debate between my husband and myself.
Right, right.
I think at this point I might have 9.
Uh-huh.
And it's interesting, people will say, oh my goodness. Well, harp players don't say that, they get it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
But I liken it to the thought that, people know that you need the right tool for the job. And sometimes one harp is not necessarily the right tool for that job, if you will. Mm-hmm. And so, I have my largest harps are just like 34 string harps. And so they stand about 5 feet tall and a beautiful range of about 5 octaves. But I love, as I mentioned, taking smaller harps out into nature. So I have one that I really love, but it's a little too big to fly with, which I'm not doing at the moment. But so I have a small harp that was designed in answer to my request to a harp maker to build the harp that would fit in the overhead bin of an airplane. And so he created basically kind of a flat harp, if you will, and it is delightful. So, it's always having the right tool for the job.
Exactly. I totally understand that.
I knew you would.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have one more song to share. This one is called Far and Away. What influenced this piece?
This piece is one of my collection of music I call Beach Sketches. And this came out of a time I gave myself the time and opportunity several years ago to do a 6-week creative retreat. My family had a place on the Gulf Coast of Florida, and no one else was able to be there that year. And so I went, and I was able to go right out onto the beach each morning and each evening, walk in the surf, playing the harp. The first time I went down to the beach with the harp and stood in the water, suddenly this whole pod of dolphins appeared, and the local morning beach walkers all said, "Oh, we haven't seen the dolphins all winter so far. You must be the dolphin whisperer." And I said, "Yes, that would be me."
Excellent.
But nonetheless, out of that time, I really wanted to see if I could let my active mind step to the side and just let music flow and see what came out. And it took a bit. It took a number of days, really. I would say like a week and a half before I really my mind would step aside and music would just come out. And the Beach Sketches is a collection of music I've recorded that it is just that. It's lovely, beautiful, peaceful music that just came, I say, from the confluence of sand, sea, sky, spirit, and strings.
All right, that was Far and Away from Martha Gallagher. Thank you so much, Martha, for being on the podcast. We certainly appreciate you being here. We appreciate your talent. And, of course, we appreciate the beautiful harp music.
Oh, an absolute pleasure, Jay. Thank you so much. And so all wonderful vibes going out to you and all of your listeners.
Well, thank you. We've shared your website and information about you in the show notes, so that's there so people can contact you and learn more about you. So thank you so much, Martha.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. A pleasure to be here.
So if you have questions or guest suggestions, or you would like to perhaps sponsor the podcast, please email me at openingtheharpchakra@yahoo.com. There are also links to PayPal and Venmo if you'd like to contribute to the production of this venture. Please subscribe as well. In the coming weeks, more beautiful harp music from around the world. I'm Jay Michaels. Thank you so much. Peace. Namaste.